Today we will implement file logging with file size and time-based rolling policies. Also, we will see how to send files to email, WhatsApp, and other destinations using file provider. Also, we will implement this in an Android library. I will use Android-logback library, which supports multiple simultaneous logging destinations. We will use same logger to log file and log into logcat. As you can see, there is a detailed wiki documentation. You can also check XML implementation and configuration of Android-logback. I will implement everything in Kotlin. Let's start our implementation. I created this project in my first video.
Let's start with creating an Android library. File, new model. Select Android library. Let's name it file logger with com.log. Minimum SDK will be the same as our minimum SDK in my project. And finished. Let's add everything. Our file logger is created.
Let's start with implementation in our Gradle scripts. Let's start with our dependencies.gradle file. We will add a JSON converter, which will help us to log our classes.
I will use this version. And to use our logback library, we need a setup for J 1.7.25. You should check this from its own library. It could change. And also logback, which should be 2.0. Okay. Let's add our app dependencies in here.
The first one is SLF for J. I added my
implementations. Let's use version 0.
That's it. Our dependencies.gradle file implemented. Let's check what we have in our file loggers Gradle file. Just change definitions, app dependencies equals root project .x app dependencies API app dependencies dot
JTX app dependencies dot SLF for J app dependencies dot logback app dependencies dot JSON, and do not forget to add this.
I synchronized my project. Let's start with implementing our file logger class. It will be object type, since I will use this file logger like a singleton object in Kotlin. Variable path to log will be my file's path for logging. This will be my file's logging path. I will have a private variable logger to log in this object, which will not be initialized. We need to choose logback logger in here. As you can see, please be careful. We will have two different type of rolling policy. The first one is time-based rolling policy. When 24 hour is exceeded, the first hour's log will be removed from my file destination. When a file in an hour exceeds my megabyte limit, then a new file will be created with a new index in that file, and the new log will be printed into that new indexed file. And also I will have a gigabyte limit, which will remove the first log when the log exceeded my gigabyte limit. The first log will be removed from the file path. Rolling policy hour. This will be my hour limit in my application. Let's create object. Name it file log constants. In our file log constants, we will have four constant value. Constant value default rolling policy R. This will be our limit, which will be 24 hours. Constant, just copy the values. This will be my megabyte limit in an hour, which will be 24 megabyte. Since we can just send 25 megabyte files with Gmail, just be careful giving megabyte limit in an hour. I will give overall gigabyte limit, which will be 2 gigabyte. I hope there won't be an application that will exceed this gigabyte limit in 24 hours. So it's also I will have an file indexing path. My files named with this default file indexing. Log time is constant value. Then I will have my time in here with hours, and also I will have an index. Each hour will change this value with time. Let's change the type of object file constants. It should be an object. Also, I will have a private variable logback. name, you will see this logback name in our logcat when I appended my logcat with file appender, and I will also append logcat encoder into my file logger. You will see your logs with name file log. Let's continue our implementation with creating our logback. Let's call a init private, no, it should be public, one init log file logger, and it should have path to log, which should be string nullable rolling policy r, which should be integer, and also has a default value, default rolling policy r. Let's copy and paste. Also, I will have rolling policy megabyte, rolling policy overall gigabyte, and default indexing should be string, and copy paste everything in here. Let's create our function. This dot path to log equals to path to log. This dot rolling policy is equals to rolling policy r, and also copy and paste everything for all gigabyte and indexing. If you want to make change in anything in here, just change the default values with what you want. And I will have a logger. I now need to create my logger equals to create logger. This create logger will return private from create logger if path to log equals to null, or just change with text util stat is empty path to log, then return null. There won't be any log. Let's logger. Or return configure file logger. This configure file logger private from configure file logger will return logger. Let's create a logger context to use. We need a logger context. Logger context, which should be a logback logger context. Please be careful, because the logger factory, which will be slf4j logger factory, that get logger factory as logger context. We create our context. context.reset. We will reset our context. Then we will create our root logger. This root logger will created by logger factory. Logger factory that get logger with logback name, which is file log as logger. Just check the root logger dot level, which will be our level. I will support all levels, so jhead dot cost dot logback dot classic level all. I will use level in our logback, which is all. Now I need to create two different type of appender. One is file appender, which have rolling policies, and the other one is logcat appender, which will bind our logcat to this logger. We just need to use file logger to log into our logcat and in our file. Just create a file appender which will be rolling file, sorry for that, rolling file appender, rolling file appender, as you can see it's logback rolling file appender. Appender logger logging event logging event and function create file rolling file appender with rolling policy, which will need context and path to log. Private create file rolling appender, which will take two parameter, which will be context and it should be logger context, Android-logback logger context, and file path, which should be string. And also it returns this rolling file appender. While creating file appender, we will just need to create a rolling file appender. I will create rolling file appender with another function, which will take context and file path, private create rolling file appender which will return rolling file appender with the same logging event. Rolling file appender equals to rolling file appender I logging event with constructor call rolling file appender dot is append is equals to rolling file appender dot context equals to context logger context. We can just remove the file path from function call, and also let's remove it here. Now we create our rolling file appender, and let's create rolling file policy, which will be create rolling file policy. Let's give these arguments context and file path. I just need to return rolling file appender private create rolling policy, which will take these two arguments. And while creating rolling policy, we just need to value rolling policy specify size and time based rolling policy that will have I logging event call constructor. Now I have size and time based rolling policy for my file. Let's configure my policy. Policy that file name pattern is equals to dollar file path slash default file indexing dot txt. I will give file pattern as file path that will be taken from external, and also I will give the default file indexing. When I give the file name pattern like this, it will just create files with its own policy. Max history is equals to rolling policy rolling policy dot set max size file size is equals to file size with file size megabyte coefficient times rolling policy megabyte, and also set total size cap with file size time gigabyte coefficient with rolling overall gigabyte. This will be my each log file size limit, which when the megabyte coefficient is exceeded, then the new file will be created with new index in this path, and I have a gigabyte limitation for overall log. Rolling policy dot set parent rolling file appender. So I need to add rolling file appender, rolling file appender, file appender, I logger event. I need to add rolling file appender. With this line, I will set my policy to my file appender. Also, let's add another policy. When application is started, it is clean history on start. It will clean the history if needed on the start of this file appender. Rolling policy dot context equals to context rolling policy dot start. Let's start out rolling policy, return rolling policy. Now we have created our rolling policy. Let's name it size and time based rolling policy event. Just define return type. I now created my rolling policy. My rolling policy file appender dot rolling policy is equals to my rolling policy in here. Just I need to start my encoder, which will be my pattern layout encoder. Encoder dot pattern. This pattern will be my logging pattern. You can see detail of this pattern in wiki page. I will just use this style of pattern in my logs. I will have just level of my log. I will have date with this and message. Context is equals to context. Let's start the encoder at start rolling file appender dot encoder equals the encoder. And also let's name my appender is equals to my rolling file appender return rolling file appender. Now I created my file appender. If you just add this appender root logger dot add appender file appender return root logger. If you just write these two lines, your file logging implementation is done. But when you log something, you will not see in your logcat. If you want to bind your logcat with the same logger, you just need to bind your logcat into the same root logger. Just create value logcat appender, which will be created by create logcat appender. I always do the same which will need just context. Let's private fun create logger appender, which will return logcat appender in here. Logcat appender here. So I just need to define value encoder equals to pattern layout encoder and encoder dot context equals to context. I need to define context, local context in here, context. I just need to add encoder dot pattern, which will be my pattern for logcat. You do not need to add too many variable in pattern. When you start logging, you will see what I mean, because the date is already given in our logcat. You do not have to define it again. Value logcat appender, which will be equal to logcat appender with constructor called logcat appender dot context equals to context in here. Also, just I have used same logcat appender dot encoder equals to encoder, and also logcat appender dot start return logcat appender. That's it. Our logcat appender is created, so I just need to root logcat.add appender, logcat appender. Now we bind our logcat appender with file logger. Use the same convention, or it will not be same maybe, but you can just use the same methods with the timber, because mesh and where arguments of any type, just calculate. There is no mistakes. Let's check if path to log not equals to null. If it's null, then it's not initialized. Just check it with text. It is path to log from log this log will have priority integer, and also a trouble, and also a message, which empty try if logger now logger equals to create logger. Logger not logger dot fqcn dot priority dot message no trouble and catch exception if any e dot prints the case. We'll add another method, private fun concat variable arguments to message string variable argument x any type which will return string variable results string is equals to empty string message let result string equals to message for x in arguments result string concatenated with JSON JSON X message is empty, then for just copy this 4 in here and return result string. Just write let. If we have a message, we will add a message and varargs to the strings, message string. If we do not have, then we just add our JSON object into our log priority equals logger dot debug integer and message equals to concat message and x. Let's see. We have finished our implementation. I just need to define these as now. Just implement other type of logs warn and error. In info we will have info integer. In warn we will have warn integer, and also in error integer, but we will also have throwable, which will be throwable. Also we need a throwable in here, which will be equal to null throwable, and that's it. Okay everyone, I just forget adding this line in here, rolling file policy appender dot start. If you do not start this appender, that will not work. Our implementation for file logging is finished completely. Let's check if it's working, but we need to initialize our logger from an entry point of application. You should initialize your logger from every entry point of your application. Do not forget this. In my case, our project has just only one type of entry point. I will not care about this. I will use application component to initialize my logger. Let's create a package, name it app, and create a Kotlin file named app, that class that will extend application. Override on create method call init logger. In here init found init logger. If build config dot debug, then we should change also the manifest file in here. Android name app.app. If you do not give this name, it will not run your application in here. Just run our project once and see if there is an error. As you can see, we launched successfully, and at this point we have file logger dot. So we need add dependencies to our model. Let's get to build Gradle of my application. In our API, just project with name of file logger. If you are not sure of your project name, you can just check it from these settings.gradle and paste the same name in here. Just synchronize file logger dot init logback logger this dot get external file directory null dot to string plus file dot separator plus log will be saved under the directory of which named log, that's under our external directory. Let's write our first local log path d, sorry, that's file logger dot d session started. I need to create a debug manifest from user. As you see, I just enable file logging with debug mode. So let's create a directory, name it debug. Also copy a manifest into this debug. If you do not know how the manifest merger works, you should just check it on the site from the Android developers page. Sorry everyone, I forgot to record the remaining part of implementation, so I will try to explain every step from now on. I will try to show how you can list your files into a recycler view and how you can send it with mail. You need to return a list of strings, that's the names of the file lists. I You can just use log that we store in file logger, and we will get files from this directory, and after getting the file list we will add it into our return list. We will just need a tier words list because we want to get the latest file for the first of my recycler view. I implemented a send mail function. It needs an URI. That URI is part of my file. An email intent, as you can see. I will send it to my mail. I need to put my file into as the attachment. I will also add subject with time. Then I will send it. I will start an intent. I can also send it with WhatsApp, Slack, or other options with using this email intent. Sorry everyone, I need to grant your read URI permission and clip data to my email intent to use file provider in newer version of Android. I fix it. To be able to reach this file in that path, I need to share my file with the other application, email application. So I need to implement a file provider. As you can see, I created a debug manifest file. You just need to change it into project, and you need to create a new directory named debug. As you can see, I already created such as debug2. Then you can also copy and paste Android manifest into the debug, and you have the same application with different properties, but you should also check it from the manifest merger documentation in Android actually. uh, but I'm using the same properties with the add a file provider, created XML paths resource. Let me show you that one. Destination to save my files. I need to create an XML. Just right click and resource directory such as XML2. As you can see, I have an XML and XML2, and I will just create a new Android resource file like paths. So I already created this one. With this file provider, I can share my files that's in external files path with another application. To show this to user, I just need to implement an fragment that shows the list of my log files. In my first video you can see how I implemented view binding. An adapter. This adapter is a string. This adapter in diff callback, as you can see, it's checking first is if the items are the same. In diff utils, I will explain in next video in a detailed way. I just I checking for the string. I don't need any further implementation in here. Let's create a view holder that will inflate my item view binding. I must create a item for this recycler view. This item just has a text that has the name of the file. So on bind view holder, I just call the holder.bind. In my bind, I assign the file name to the text, and also I just give a set on click listener for this item, since when the user selects the item on the list, I will create an intent to send mail. I just created a list log adapter which takes an listener. This listener is called when the item is clicked. So when the item clicked, I will get file name from file location. I create an intent to send it with a mail. I need an activity URI to path and also info. It's up to you. I just create a string. You can give another detailed information such as device ID, device type, and so on. Just write file path as a text where he or she can manually find the path. Create a layout manager for recyclerview and set the adapter to submit list of file method that I show you that returns the file list in my directory that I store in my path. I just quickly show you my fragment that just select the item you want to send. The second text is my path app layout constraint button, the bottom of parent it is 0dp, and also I just need to create action to open my list log fragment. So I create a fragment. I define an action to open this fragment. Text view. When the user clicks this text view, I will open fragment. That's it. My implementation is finished. I will show you how it's working now. I can open my logs in here. As you can see, this is my first time running. I have 16th of February 7 a.m. when I click my log, which that shows which options I can send my file. I will just click. So I have my file as an attachment, and the subject and the description that I created is auto-completed. So when I click this again, it will open. I will open my screen. I can send it, or rather, when I click my Gmail account, I can go back. Let's see where my files stored. In my external storage in here, and under my files and under files log. Let's check if my file exists in here also. Project development, files, log, and text. Let's see what we have in our text.